Are you ready to have a bad memory? You ready? Okay. I want you to remember this. So we're not reading it right now. And if you can read whatever this language is, then just keep it to yourself. How many times did that word up here? Anybody know? Who said once? Wow, I'm impressed. Do you know how to speak that language or read that language? Very good. So this is what it feels like when someone has a memory impairment and then you say, well, didn't you remember about the appointment? I just told you about it. I just showed that to you. How could you not remember? Because you didn't have any way to integrate that information, did you? Okay, that feeling of like, I don't like this feeling. I feel incompetent. I feel stupid. That feeling, hold on to that feeling for when you're working with guys with brain injury. And then this one is just sort of fun. And you don't have to read the whole thing, but you sort of get the point. Okay? All right, let's talk about head injury, right? So we're here today to say how can we help folks that have head injury. This particular slide, and I have used this a lot, so you might have seen this before. Head injury kills people. I mean, that's kind of the bottom line here. This is a makeshift memorial in a homeless encampment. The shadowy things on the fence in the background, those are the guy's jeans. And I wish the picture was more clear. I'm sorry that it's not. I hope you can see that there's a cross, and then there's a chair. There's some little flowers at the bottom of the cross. In front of the flowers, there's like a wooden board. There's a coffee cup. It was his coffee cup. When you're homeless and you're living in an encampment, the last people you want in that camp are police, EMTs, and fire department. His buddies, when he passed out and they knew that he was really having some problems, they called the fire department. The fire department came right to the encampment. Now, the folks living in the encampment knew that probably meant the end of that encampment. And they had been living there a long time. It was well established. I met this particular individual. His name was Jay Bird. I met him about 3 weeks before he died. And it was underneath it was kind of like a little creek thing. And so the road had like the road goes over the creek thing, so you could go under the road. And he lived under there. And we were actually looking for someone else. We're really concerned about this other guy, but that's how homeless outreach works. And we saw Jay Bird, and I noticed that there was a lot of blood. And he had a hard time waking up. And I happened to be with a county social worker, someone who worked for the county. And we said, "Are you okay?" And we could see the blood on his sleeping bag and on the ground around him. And he had gotten beaten up the night before. And then we said, "Well, we'll take you to the hospital." And he said, "No, I can't go." And the first thing he said is, "I'm a cockroach, and cockroaches don't die easy." And if you've done homeless work, sometimes that happens, is that self-image rises or falls so low that you start identifying with, cockroaches. And then we said, "No, we really need to take you." You know what his next argument was? He was afraid of the bill. And so we had to assure him that we're going to somehow get this handled. I got, the county lady, right, with me. And she was going to work some backdoor deals to make sure he didn't get the bill. So we took him to the hospital, and he was released very, very quickly afterward. And then 3 weeks later, now I don't know for sure that it was the head injury that caused the death, but he sure was not of an age where, you know, other things were going to have some kind of major impact. So it was a strange set of coincidences that very shortly after that, he died. Okay, have you ever had a head injury? If we went to one of those shelters and now we have the information, we know that at least half of those folks have had a head injury, right? But if we all went into the shelter today and then we each sort of partnered up with a shelter resident and we wanted the answer to this question and we asked it just like this, guess what the answer is? How do you know that? That's what the answer is. It would be no. And you know that, huh? Mental health professionals often don't know that. I'm kind of embarrassed because I'm a psychologist, right? We're not trained how to ask that question. We ask it just like this, and the answer is no, and we assume that because the answer is no, that it must be no. So check this out. We change how we ask the question. If I say, did you ever get hit on the head? Now guess what happens? Yes. And guess what else? I get a really good story. Okay, not that I was there to be entertained, but you can't believe the amount of detail that comes out. Were you ever in a car accident? Guess what happens? So when I provide specific situations, then I'm starting to get the information that otherwise is closed. So this particular gentleman, when asked, how many times have you been hit in the head, instead of, have you ever had a head injury? He said, I've been in fights all my life, lady. And then he described being hit in the head with baseball bats, pipes, and hammers. And that was mainly during his teenage years when the brain is really in an important developmental state. This particular gentleman, we were lucky enough to put into permanent housing, and you're absolutely right, Nancy, that permanent housing is what homeless people need. You can kind of, if you can see this okay, he's got kind of a deer in the headlights look. And the reason he has kind of a deer in the headlights look is, can you imagine the culture shock that you would go through, right? If you had been living on the streets for 18 or 20 years and now you're in a house. So it's like, this is weird. It would be like, you know, if the opposite happens, we understand that, right? That it'd be very hard to go from living in a house to living on the street. For whatever reason, we forget that it's really hard to come back into society. I had major struggles one time with the shelter staff because there was one gentleman who insisted that his beans be cooked in the can on the stove, and you don't put them in a pot. And the shelter staff had a problem with that. But it would just be like, you know, us saying, well, wait a minute, you know, this is how I do it. So he is still in his house, but it was very, very difficult. Major cognitive impairment, another veteran, by the way. And I can't even begin to tell you how difficult it was, because with vets you have to get their original DD-214 for some of the housing vouchers and things like that. So I'm really glad that we had this time to spend together this morning. I hope that you found this information valuable, and I look forward to any emails that you have with any requests for additional information. Thank you.